Hello and welcome back. Today my video is on frequency. Now this is going to be the first week of a class that I have coming up called No More A-Holes. And the reason I named the class that is because I wanted people to know very clearly what the class was about. And I searched for a lot of different topics or ways to say it. And when I clicked on that, I had a couple of friends are like, "Where do I sign up?" So I felt like that was really resonating with people, and that's what I want to do. Um, so I'm going to talk about frequency in relation to that class that's coming up, but I also want to let people know that if you're not planning on taking that class, this will still be a very interesting video and important information. So I ask that you please go ahead and continue to listen. Um, and I also want to make it clear that when I use the word a-holes, I'm not just talking about men, because I know that a lot of times we can attribute that word to men. And I mean just anybody in your life that treats you poorly. So it could be a woman, it could be a boss, it could be friends, it could be a romantic partner. It's just if you find yourself having those types of people coming into your life a lot and also not being able to break free from those people, even though you've severed the ties, but they just keep appearing and they keep bothering you. And as soon as you feel like you've let yourself, freed yourself of that experience, it just comes right back. Then that is what this class is about. And so the first week of class, it's going to be a 4-week class. And again, please go back and listen to that video. It will give you more information on the class. But the first week is we are going to learn about frequency. So what is frequency? The best way to explain it is when you think about a radio station. So if you think about you want to listen, let's say you want to listen to classic rock and the classic rock station is 97.5, then you just move your dial to 97.5. You come in contact with the frequency, your radio does, and then you are able to listen to classic rock. Well, if you want to change it to country, then you could move it to 107.9. You move your dial and you access that frequency, and then you can hear country. So that there are obviously radio waves that move through and that we can't see, that move through the energy field, and when we tune our dial to that, then we connect with it and we can listen to the music that we choose. So we as humans are also emitting frequencies, and there are all different kinds of frequencies that we can emit, and we are like magnets. So let's think of ourselves as like antennas that are radiating frequency in different areas of our lives, and we are like magnets pulling the things that match our frequency to us. And so we really need to understand what frequency is in order, and what are we emitting out into the world in order to decide, is that the frequency that I choose to emit, or is there a different frequency that I would rather emit so that I can bring in different things. Okay. Now, one of the best descriptions that I have come across regarding frequency is a book called Power versus Force, and is written by Dr. David Hawkins. And I highly recommend that book if you're interested in learning more about frequency. And through this video, we're going to talk more about frequency and his book. And so, again, if you want more information, that's the great place to go. But this will just be a little bit of a summary. So power in the book is similar to like personal power or feeling like a powerful being. It is a very high vibrating, high frequency energy that is all about. It's not about power over, it's more about empowerment. So that is the good energy. And then the negative energy is the force. So force is like control over, it is very egotistical, it uses a lot of energy to keep people down, to suppress, to it's better than, less than. It's all about the self. So people who operate from a place of force are usually operating from a place of self, and people who operate from a place of power are usually operating from a place of the collective, of caring about others. Okay, but as we look at frequency too, frequency usually has a person who is the perpetrator or the one who wants to have power over, and then sort of the victim. Okay, so if you're talking about low frequency, force is people who vibrate in those lower energies can be either the one who is using the force or the one who feels used by force. So that is a lower frequency energy. And then the more power is somebody who leads or lives their life from a place of personal power, empowerment, love of self, and love of others. And the people that are in relation with that person are usually also vibrating at those higher frequencies. And so they come together, and that's how you have the better, more healthy type of relationships. And these can be friendships, they can be romantic partners, they can be bosses, they can be people that you just encounter on the streets or in traffic. Lots of different relationships. And you can even have frequency. Your frequency is You can have frequency regarding abundance in your life, whether you have a lot of lack or you have a lot of abundance, depends on what frequency you have. There, it can be for your health, it can be for um, what else? There's, all different areas, education, the kinds of jobs that you attract, just any area of your life where you have a pattern that repeats it's because of a frequency, and you can have good patterns and bad patterns. So that's how that kind of works, and that's what we'll be uncovering and learning about in this class. Now I'm going to one of the other things that Dr. Hawkins talks about in his book is something that he calls the map of consciousness. And that is where we can start to see what are the different frequencies that people vibrate, and learn more about those. So I'm going to bring up and share my screen, and I'm going to show you this map of consciousness, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to change the view to full screen. Okay. So this is the map of consciousness that shows us the different radio stations that Dr. Hawkins is talking about in his book. And you'll see this it's not just in Power versus Force. I've seen several different scales like this that talk about frequency, or they might talk about different emotions and that kind of thing, and how working up this scale will begin to bring you different results in your life or different things. It will kind of change the channel and change what you experience in your life. So we're going to start on the bottom of the chart. If you can look sort of right here in the middle is 200. And that's what Dr. Hawkins refers to as the neutral place, but it's where power begins. The bottom part of the chart sort of represents the force place, and the top part of the chart is more of the personal power empowerment place. Okay, so we're going to start, and let's just say that you happen to figure out that your average vibration is in shame. And so this is a station, channel 20, let's say. Okay. So this can be a place where people vibrate uh, when they've had a lot of emotional trauma as a child. And let's talk a little bit about how the frequency, before I get into this, I do want to talk a little bit about the how are we how we get the frequency in the first place. And that is through what I call subconscious beliefs. And if you've listened to other videos here, you'll understand what subconscious beliefs are, but they're basically things that have happened to us in childhood that affect the way that we feel about ourselves. And they are really what I like to refer to as programming. So if you think about a computer, let's say we're the hardware of the computer, we as humans, and we have programs or software that is installed on us that runs in the background that sort of dictates our lives. And that's the programming is the frequency that we operate in. And this programming or these subconscious beliefs come from things that happen to us as children, or they come from societal beliefs. They come from our ancestors. They come from things that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. They come from our parents and the way that they treated us growing up. They come from schools. And if we were sick, we could get a lot of programming from being involved in the medical system. They come from the financial system and what we believe about money and abundance. They come from our political parties, just churches. Everywhere in the world, there are different programs that get installed within us, and they develop within us belief systems that we carry with us, and they are subconscious because we don't know they're running, but they dictate a lot of what goes on in our lives. It's almost like when you learn to drive. When you first learn to drive, you're aware of everything that you're having to do. But as you practice, then things go into automatic, they become automatic behaviors, and you don't have to think about them anymore. They're just things that you naturally do when you repeat something. It just becomes a habit and it becomes something that you don't even have to think about anymore. Well, that's how subconscious beliefs work too, is that software always working in the background. You don't have to think about it. A lot of times you're not even aware that it's running or what it is, what the programming is. And so it's very important that we start to uncover this programming because it affects so many things in our lives. It's about 90% of what happens in our lives is through subconscious programming. It's the limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves and about our lives and about the world. And when we start to discover what these are, then we start to take our power back and we start to be able to affect our frequency. So, as we are talking about this map of consciousness, if you look at the bottom, shame is, let's say, channel 20. Well, a person who has maybe been abused, rather, maybe it's physically abused or sexually abused or had a lot of trauma going on in their lives when they're very young, and this usually happens when we're in our childhood, we get programmed more than anything. I think that there's a saying like, give me a child before age 7 and I'll show you the man um, or the woman, because when we are below the age of 7, our brains are in what's called a theta brain state. And that means that we are little sponges, and everything that goes on in our lives, we take personally, and we think that has everything to do with us. And our brains are not developed enough to understand that there are other people outside of us that make decisions and do things that are not our fault. So we just kind of take on a bunch of other people's beliefs and other people's emotion, and we just draw it into us, and it becomes sort of the fabric or the foundation of our lives. And that continues on through our childhood. There's another stage from age 8 through puberty, called where we're in the alpha brain state, where we're still super programmable. And then as we move into adulthood, we become less programmable, but we still are very programmable. So, between media um, and just the things that we watch over and over again, we can be convinced of a lot of different things. So, as we become more aware of how this all works, then we start to take our power back and start to be able to choose what we want and release the things that that are no longer serving us. So, we talked about shame. If as we move up, 30 is guilt. So, let's say instead of feeling ashamed for things that happened to us that were never our fault, but we couldn't understand they weren't our fault. So we can feel a lot of shame for things that happened to us. We can feel a lot of guilt if we made a lot of mistakes as children, if we didn't behave and we were called bad or wrong, or why can't you be more like your brother? We can feel a lot of guilt, and we take on a lot of guilt and shame from that sort of thing. When we get up into channel 50, that's sort of an apathy, a depressed state. We feel unmotivated, flat. We just don't feel a zest for life. Usually has to do with a lot of self-judgment, self-hatred. Um, and a lot of times that could be, from ancestors. If our ancestors did not know how to love themselves, then they couldn't teach us to do it. So, one of the best things a parent can ever do for their children is heal themselves. Because as we heal that trauma from our past, then we don't pass it on. And also, we don't want to feel guilty for anything that we've passed on, because it all can be healed. But as we become more aware of how this process works, it becomes we become better able to serve our children and other people in our lives, because we start to understand how this all gets put in place. So as we move up the scale, we've got 75 is grief, and that's where you can feel sad, distraught, lost. Fear is where you feel weak, anxious, and a victim. Fear is one of the hugest levels of control that is used by people who are operating from a place of force. So, as you know, if you've been in a relationship with somebody who has terrorized you, fear is the biggest thing that they use. They also use shame and guilt and lots of different mind games. We usually call that gaslighting, to control uh, us in these types of relationships. Um, but fear is one of the best weapons for these types of relationships. Desire here is referring to not there's good desire, but this is more of a greed, of a I have to have it, a lust, a neediness, like I have to have control of the it's like something that you need to feel good or to feel powerful. It's that need for power, need, desire. It's a negative thing. Anger, again, anger can it's like hate and blame and aggression in the world. Pride is like the ego. I'm better than everyone else. It's very self-serving, and you need people from outside of you to validate you, to make you feel like you are enough. And so all of those are where you're operating from a place of force, and that is the frequencies that are destructive in our lives. It's destructive energy. And so perpetrators and victims are both operating in those frequencies from different, it's almost like different sides of the coin, but you have to be in that frequency in order to attract those types of relationships. And so that is very empowering, because it's not empowering to learn that is why, but it's very empowering to learn that if I learn, I don't have to change people out in the world, and I don't have to keep fighting a fight that I may be have been fighting for 30 years because it's not working. If it's been 30 years, it's obviously not working, but there is something that does work, and that is changing our frequency. And that is, if we're not on the 97.5 and the people that treat us that way are all on 97.5, then they can't don't have access. They can't tune to us because they're, let's say they're at 100, they operate from a place of fear. If we're not at 100, they don't have access to us anymore. So we need to rise up, and then we can change what we see happening in our lives. So when you get to 200, that's when you start to be in a place of power in your life. That's when you start to feel courage, you start to feel more brave, and then it goes up from there to where it's more of a place of neutral, where you're just starting to feel more confident and steady in your life, up to willingness. You get curious about life. You start to get curious about this process and how can I change. You stop beating yourself up for making mistakes, for even doing this in the first place. You stop having regret and you just start learning and getting curious and growing. And then there's more acceptance for why your life turned out the way it did, and that you now have power to change it. And you don't look back and feel sorrow for what you've experienced, but you start to feel empowered to just move forward and just let go of all of that old stuff, so that you can begin living your life the way that you want to, no matter what your age is. It is never too late. And um and so and as you move up in consciousness, you start to understand that it's never too late. When you're in the forest place, then you will have a lot of regret, and you will beat yourself up and judge yourself. And when you're feeling that way about yourself and your life, then you're not operating from a place of power. You're still in force. So you've got to keep raising your frequency and moving into a place of self-love, appreciation for self, and that takes time. And then as you move up into these higher states of consciousness, you start to feel very creative. You start to feel very excited about your life. You start to unlock the gifts that you came with, and you start to understand why you're here, what you're born to do, and that sort of thing. And when you do that, your life just takes on whole new meaning. Now, most people are living in, I would say, somewhere between the people who are living in higher states of consciousness in the power place are usually living at somewhere between 200 and 300 level on an average. So this is an average. It doesn't mean that you don't dip down into the lower frequencies, but it just means that you also raise up into the higher frequencies. So you sort of go on this like bandwidth of frequencies. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to grow it. You're trying to, raise the average as you go. And the more work you do on yourself and the more you let go of, the more that you will raise that. And we are going to talk a little bit more about how we change the frequencies. That's going to be the third week of class. So I'll save that for that video. But the last thing I'll say is that what we're going to do in the second week is we are going to do a group rapid transformational therapy session. And rapid transformational therapy is a way of accessing the subconscious through hypnosis or deep relaxation. Doesn't necessarily need to be hypnosis, but that's the method I use. And if you aren't easily hypnotized, then you will maybe just feel a deep state of relaxation when you begin. But it helps us to access the old memories and some of that programming within our subconscious that is the root cause of the frequencies that we are emitting in the world. And then after that session is over, and everybody will do this on their own and they will get their own answers. And then afterwards, we'll have some time to take notes and do a little bit of sharing. But I will, in that session, also create what I call a transformational recording for you to listen to for 21 days that will help to reprogram your frequency and start to raise that frequency because you're installing new software and you're clearing out the old software. So you're, what do they call that? You're deleting old software and installing new software in your subconscious to raise your frequency. And so we'll be doing that in that session. So if you have any questions about frequency, please put them in the comments below. Again, we'll go into it more in the class, but if you're not in the class, it's important to understand this concept, and I would look into the book Power versus Force to understand it more. Um, and I think that's it for the video. I appreciate so much you tuning in, and I look forward to my next video that will talk more about the RTT session that will be coming up in the second week of the class. Okay. And if you want to learn more about RTT, you can learn that in that video as well. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.